Hey, leader. Welcome to Stop, Drop, and Roll, the podcast dedicated to empowering you at the intersection of work and home in leadership, with or without the title. I'm Jen Caceres, here to meet you right where you are and help you intentionally grow as you reflect, observe, listen, and evolve along your leadership journey. Welcome to Stop, Drop, and Roll. I am excited to introduce my guest today, Mr. Calvin Lawrence. As you may know, as a listener, the podcast is for folks who are leaders with or without the title, leading from home and at work. And today I'm excited. We're going to talk Dr. Lawrence all about his mission, his vision, what he does. He has an exciting new book. So, Calvin, Dr. Lawrence.
Hey, yeah, I'm glad you did that because the last time I talked on a show, it's just plain Calvin. I get the doctor thing. That was a big deal 20 years or so ago when I first got the doctorate. You wanted to be called by that all the time, even by your mom. But no, now it's like Calvin, whatever, what's up? I'm good. So I'm good. Calvin is great.
Why don't you start off? Just tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe some of your story and what it is that you do.
Okay, I'll do my best, Jen. And thank you so much for having me on the show today. I just appreciate you. I forget how we met, but it might have been some comment or thing that you did. You're such an impressive person. So, a little bit about me. I'm a native Virginian. I live in Texas now. 41 years in my past history have been involved with education, the process all the way from K-12 all the way up to college and graduate school. I've been an educator all my life. I guess I always will be because there's a part of me that will always say, okay, you're comfortable and that's your environment and that's who you are. That's what you are.
Yeah.
Now I've become this storyteller. I've just written a book, The Happy Leader, and I'm real excited about sharing that around, hopefully the globe. I keep saying it's not just a local or Texas or even Virginia thing, wherever I can take it. My mission when I first started my company, Calvin Lawrence Speaks, was to bring people together. We were going into COVID and it was divisive, still somewhat divisive as we continue on through this journey in life. And what I feel like I needed to do was be a conduit for bringing people together as opposed to this separation. Because my life's been ups and downs like everyone else. The book tells that it's about how you look at life and how you look at people. And then you get this dynamic about, okay, this is how I need to live my life. Now, I wish Jen, had gotten this perception a lot earlier in life. I don't know that it's been like this last 5 years, definitely since my mom passed away, because I tell people when they ask me, well, why did you write the book? And it was like, mom passed away 3 years ago. I had started the book 5 years ago. I stopped out, dropped out the year after I started it, and I'm like, I'm not going to do this. It's impossible. And then she passed, and then I thought, her story, my dad's story, the people who have been so impactful to me, all those stories are here. They're locked into me. Now, if I don't get them out, they won't ever get shared. Like a friend of mine said, you tell that story and you tell it this way, it will be there past the time that you're existing on this earth, this planet. And I was excited to try to finish that. Last year was a really good year for me in terms of writing, and then we got it done. And then this year, the book was able to be produced. I'm grateful. I'm thankful. I want to connect with people. I want to be that messenger for hope and also for bringing people together, not dividing. If I can do that, I'll say it this way, life's work is going to be fruitful and it will be what I need to be doing.
It sounds
Thank you.
like your entire journey really does revolve around that bringing people together.
It does, because if I reflect back to my parents and my mom in particular, she was the type of person who liked to bring people together. I grew up in a urban era where we weren't together in terms of a lot of things. We were going through the civil rights movement and a lot of different issues were going on in this country, in the US, if not globally. I came into this with an understanding that things weren't maybe quite the way they should have been, but I had great leaders who were foundational for me, my mom and my dad, and they were about just talking to people in a communal kind of a thing. Didn't realize it then. I do realize it now that it's the foundation for who I am and what I talk about. And it started a long time before I even realized what I was doing. So you're right. You're right about that.
It's so powerful, Calvin. And I want to talk as we get into the book concept and your mission and how you really have come into that space of who you are as a leader, as a man in general, and
Yeah.
person, and who you are. I want to go through the steps of stop, drop, and roll with you. I have a couple of questions around each one. And the
Okay.
first one is around reflection. In your book, you explore that intersection of leadership and emotional well being. Your book is called The Happy Leader. Can you reflect on that and share maybe just one personal experience that really shaped your understanding of how relationships impact leadership?
I can't. I will use you said experience. The guy's name was, when he passed, he was Dr. Darnell Johnson. When I met him, he was Coach Darnell Johnson. And his life is a testament to, we're on this planet to help others. It's not so much about what we can do for ourselves, although we're going to get a lot, we get a whole lot more when we give than when we just kind of try to hold it in, right? So he was that type of a guy. I didn't realize at the time, because we didn't talk about role models back then. People just did the work. It's
Mm.
kind of funny. And he was a role model for me. He was a black male. He was in a leadership role. He was my coach, one of my first coaches. He was a community servant because he was involved in community activism probably before it got to be, again, a cool thing coming out of the 60s. Maybe it was. We're talking about late 70s, late 70s, early 80s. He was the guy. He was doing this stuff and I didn't realize it. And not only that, Jen, he took me under his wing. Now, later, there are some similarities that and I don't even put myself on his level, but there's some similarities of what he accomplished and the road that I went on. It's funny because I think when you have role models like that, I don't even know if you have to be as intentional just because they were showing the way.
Mm.
If I say this right, he was showing me the way of how to do things and how to treat people, along with what I said about my parents, showing me, because I think you also have to have somebody, and I say this a lot, or I used to say it a lot. I hope I keep saying it. He'll say it. You have to have somebody outside of mom and dad. Sometimes there's a point where you don't listen to mom and dad. It's
Mhm.
like, yeah, mom and dad, but y'all aren't so cool. I want to listen to what the rest of the world is saying. That
Right?
I hate to say that, but that it is true. He was inserted into my life at that particular point when I was very impressionable and I needed that kind of a role model figure. He was there. He was that guy. And so now when I think about leadership, when I think about bringing young men up, or especially young men, because they got a lot more problems sometimes, I look back at that guy, that fellow, and it's very easy. When you asked me that question, I thought about it and I said, there's a lot of different people and a lot of different experiences, but this is the one that's as impactful into my life as any of them that I've ever had. And his name is in the book, and I do a little special tribute to him. The people that were really super impactful, I have to say super because everybody's been impactful to me for all of them, you in particular, but he was so impactful. I have this entire section that's dedicated to him because of what he did and how he lived his life, the life of servitude. And you won't be able to see it, but there's a picture of him on a closet wall in my office here, my little office space. And he's standing as a prison chaplain. And this is something that he did as a voluntary basis for probably 30 years.
Wow.
He's standing at the bar, and I believe he's praying with a guy. And I mean, this is something that, the picture itself, like they say, pictures speak a thousand. It's 1,000-word picture. And when I look at that and I get kind of like, I don't want to do the work. And then I look at this guy who did that for 30 years and then get paid for it. And then I think, uh-huh,
Yeah.
I got a ways to go, Jen. I got a ways to go, but thankfully I have people like that who have the guiding light that show me the way.
That's wonderful. It's so true, isn't it? Just having that visual reminder of why we do what we do every day, giving us that purpose and that vision.
I agree with that so much because I'm no psychologist or sociologist, but I know they've got research out there to show sometimes you just have to have the visual. Sometimes you have to be able to see it to believe that you're also able to do it. And I know we can say it, but then to also have a role model or have an image that kind of keeps you, yeah, I'm focusing on that light. I'm focusing in that direction. I got to stay on the course, stay focused. I think it's so powerful. So
Yeah.
powerful.
Could you repeat his name for us again one more time,
I
Calvin?
will. It's Darnell Johnson because you could probably Google him and find some things about him. He grew up in Virginia. He went to school at Elizabeth City State University, a historically black college, and then he got his master's at Kentucky. And I don't know where he received his doctorate, but later in life, he earned his doctorate. I'll tell one more story about him. I met him for the last time at a library, and I had my son with me. And my son
Mm.
was, at the time, he was becoming this emerging athlete. Now it's kind of ironic, Jen, because Darnell found me when I was this emerging athlete. Here's my
Wow.
son, and I'm bragging to Caleb about how great Darnell was. I wish I still had the picture because I would have put the picture in the book.
Mhm.
There's a picture of me, this huge man, because Darnell should have played in the NFL. He was about 6'5, he was about 260.
Wow.
Huge guy in the middle. There's me, and then there's my son, who's just about a freshman in high school. And we're standing there, and it's one of the best times of my life because there's my role model, there's my son. It doesn't get any better than that.
That is so special. Thanks so much for
Yeah.
sharing that. And yeah, that's such a huge reflection of that leadership and the emotion that it evoked on you to have that person to really impact you as a young man to go forward in
Yes.
education and then of course, impact your son as well. So thanks for sharing that.
Yes.
Um
Thank you.
in the light of observing, we'll move into observe. What are some common relationship patterns that you've observed in leaders that really struggle with connection or influence?
Especially new leaders when they've been trained, maybe at the university level and whatnot. They, of course, they think they know it all, right? And they come out, and it's about the system and productivity and how can we increase whatever. But what it really boils down to, and it kind of reflects back to Darnell, it boils down to people. And if you don't get the people part of it right, you're missing the boat. You can still have some decent results, but you're never going to be really successful until you get that people part. And that's not easy because people are not, what's a nice way of saying it? They're not these innate objects that it's not like math. Darnell's subject is funny because he was a math teacher, but he was a personable guy. And sometimes it's like the math guys don't always think about the qualitative side of life. They're more
Sure.
quantitative. They're the numbers, figures, data, processes, you name it. A lot of leaders, some of them who don't even believe that way, are being pushed that way. But it really boils down to how am I going to get people to trust me as a leader? And who am I as a leader? What do I do? How do I interact with these people? And if you get that down and you work at it, and I think it's a two-way street too, but if you on your side of it, work at it, then you've got a chance to be a really powerful person in terms of leadership. And I think that's what's missing a lot today.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And what do you think about the energy that people bring with them to a room? How does that define leadership?
Oh, I think it defines it in a great way because you do have energy, whether it's negative or positive, and you can come in and be this guy. I won't call him names, but I was around a leader who had a lot of negative energy. And that person, one of the worst years of my professional career, they would come in and they would, oh man, all the stuff that you are told not to do. I'm
Yeah.
personally going to nail you to the wall in front of your colleagues. I'm putting people down. That's an energy, but it's definitely not the one you want to have. Then you have these people who are kind of like, okay, I just want to be the wallflower. I think there's some credibility to that, but I don't think as a leader you can just be a wallflower. Now, I'm gonna use myself as an example with that one because there's a long time, Jen, when I thought, oh, I don't want to say a lot of stuff. I don't want to be a verbose type person. I just want to be that guy on the wall. I don't want to cause any waves. Don't want to do any problem. It's not about causing the waves. In leadership, you become the focal point. You don't have a choice, but you do have a choice whether you can be positive or negative energy that you put off. And so your best bet is to put all positive energy, right? So then how do you do that? You learn names. You're gracious to people. You're very outgoing in terms of you're available to the people who need to talk to you because maybe you're not the greatest talker, but you're there for them when they need to air an opinion or grievance. And maybe you don't even take a side. They just need you to listen. And so you're there. You walk into that room and you're that type of person. People tend to enjoy when that person comes into the room because they actually change the atmosphere of the room. And because they're the leader, they're in a position to more so change the atmosphere in that room in a positive way. And that's something I think, and I don't know if I can say, when I think about great leaders in the past, and they're easy names to pull out, like a Martin Luther King Jr. or Gandhi, or I'm trying to stay away from political figures, but when they're easy names to pull out, they walk into the room and all of a sudden it's like boom, it's charged.
Yeah.
The reason I said they're easy names because you almost feel like they come out of the cradle and they've got it. But I would say this: they probably didn't always have it, and probably they grew into that leadership role. And so there's hope for those of us like me. I'm a late bloomer. There's hope for guys like me who didn't think I could rise to that occasion. Because sometimes when you don't have a choice, and I think this is a powerful statement, you have to rise to the occasion because the people need you to rise to that occasion, or students, or whoever it might be. They need you to rise to a higher level. So you're challenged to be better than you are and to say more than you would normally say and to do more than you would normally do. But because there's a need there, and that's where the servant part comes back in, you are challenged to do it. And guess what? Most of the times, I think it takes you to another level because of the challenge that you have to meet.
What you're bringing up, Calvin, is so powerful. Really, I loved what you said there. It's really about the character, it's how you show up. Yeah,
It
thank you
is.
for that. It's so powerful because I think, and I know you can relate to this when we are back to your comment about being Dr. Calvin Lawrence, right? And that was so important to you in that moment. And, don't take that away from me. I've worked so hard for that. And then as you get a bit older, we kind of humble ourselves a little. We get to that point where we're like, it's not about our title or how many
Not
letters
about
we have
right,
behind our
right,
name,
right.
right? It's that confidence and how we show up and our character and what kind of a person we are. And in The Happy Leader in your book, it demonstrates that just showing up and being that
Yes.
person
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
leader, no
Yeah.
matter what your title is, right?
No matter what your title is, I think there's something to be, you said that about showing up. And the first word that comes to my mind is consistency. I think there are a lot of leaders that are kind of inconsistent. They're kind of like hyper and then they're back. But the people who are even keel and they come in and they do the work, and whether it's high or low, they don't get too high, they don't get too low, but they're right there. But they consistently do it because I'm dancing around this word, but I got to throw it out there because to build trust, which is critical, you've got to be consistent. And if you're not consistent, then I'm not going to trust you. I'm just going to wait until the next person they replace you with comes along. You might not be here very long. So you got to be that person. I've seen it even with little children who are probably maybe more open than some of us who are more mature. But if you're not consistent, they don't trust you. If you're consistent, even if you have to bring down the rules or consequences, they get the message and they learn to trust you. And that's a powerful thing.
Absolutely. In regard
Mhm.
to listening and that importance of happiness in leadership, It's part of the title of your book. It is the
Yes.
foundation. How do you define happy in that context of relational leadership?
Well, you asked me to define it and give my definition. And I love that because I don't have to go to Webster or somebody else. When I think about this thing, because I got happy as a main line of my title, it's being able to go through difficulties with a smile, knowing that this is what all great leaders have to do. So I define happiness as it's part of being able to work on my inner consciousness that I can sleep at night because I've done the right thing, even though there are difficult things to do. Oh, that was a tough one for me, Jen, because I thought, here's how I want to live in these roles if I'm in leadership. That I have to make some tough judgments. Sometimes you have to fire someone, but you do it because it's the right thing to do. You do it because you know it's right and it's not personal. If I can do that, then I can sleep at night. That was always my gold standard, was that I need to be able to sleep at night. I can't sleep
Mhm.
if I've done something wrong. Now, I'll tell you, and I didn't always get it right. So I know that there were times when I blew it, but then you go to that person and you try to make it right so that you can now go back to sleeping and being able to sleep well. It's a tough conundrum.
What do you think, in your opinion, in your role, having written this book, having worked in leadership for many years, what are leaders often missing? What are they not listening to? And that can be within themselves or from
Mm-hmm.
other people.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I've got like three pieces to that. So the first one is in me first. Inner is the first listening voice. If I have a good consciousness, then I'm going to be able to stop and reflect and listen. I'll say it like this too. Some people are better at that than others. I don't know that I was always that way, but you use the word as you grow up, as you get older, as you mature a little bit better. There's a little bit more humility that comes along. And I guess if you're so egocentric that you've got to be right all the time, you're probably not going to listen to that inner voice that says you might be wrong. So you got to know that there's a humility in what you're doing. And humility is not a show of weakness or sign of weakness. It's really trying to do the right things the right way. Listen to yourself. That's the first one. Number two, you got to have the sight and sounds and maybe the experiences of others. So you got to be willing to listen to other people. And there's sometimes that other people can see some things that you can't see. I'll use a story with this book. So I knew that when I was having to write it and I have an editor would see things from a different vantage point than I would see it. And she had written 5 books, Jen. So I trusted her wisdom and her knowledge. And she would say to me, this is good, but as a reader, I need to know more. You got to give me more. And so what she would do was force me to write better than I have probably ever written before. But I had to listen to that person on the outside, right? If I don't listen, I can go ahead and do it my way. It may be okay, but it won't be as good as when I get that second piece of advice or knowledge or an outside lens that probably is necessary for me to view the world or view that issue in a bigger and broader way. And then I think there's this part about, and this is maybe it's my own creation. I don't know. Maybe I grabbed it from somebody because I do that a lot. I grab some things. I try to always give other people credit for it, though, is that you've got to understand the purpose and the purpose of your mission or whatever you're doing. If it's for service, then you're listening to that voice as well. What is the purpose of this mission? What is the purpose of the vision here? Now, are we getting too far from it? Taking into account everything else, my internal consciousness, and then what the other voices are saying to me around we need to do something different or we need to make a change, or maybe we're right on track. But if we're on track, then everything should line up with whatever we've decided to be our vision or our mission, the purpose of this service that we're in. And if you get those three, I think you're in pretty good shape. What the problem usually is most of the times when you're younger, and you're maybe not as experienced, you might leave something out there. And so you got to slow it down and listen, and you got to be willing to acknowledge that I could be wrong.
Very true. So true. I will often say to your points there, especially that younger self and
Yes.
the noise that we get
Yes.
from outside. So I'll often say, listen with a
Yes.
filter, because sometimes we get all this amazing quote unquote advice from people, and it is
Yes.
so emotionally driven, right? Like our parents, you brought your parents in, they may have given you advice and you thought, nah, I know more than you do, right? Some of us do that. Or
Mhm. Yes.
advice from a loved one where they're coming at you, or another leader who is trying to impact you. I really appreciate you going through that and the humility piece, and
Mhm.
just paying attention to what we're not listening to.
Yeah. Yeah.
The last step
Good.
in role is to evolve, and that's really to grow into this space. So in regard to leadership, what are some first steps that a leader could take to maybe repair or strengthen relationships that they have at work or at home to find that happiness?
What are some first steps that leaders can do? Well, I can think of sometimes when you come into a role and the trust and whatnot has been kind of shattered, and that's why maybe you're the new person on in the role. You've got to repair all of that, and that means you got to listen to people. You've got to listen to the hearts of people. You've got to some of the things that we talked about before about being consistent and coming in, because just because you have the title does not mean that they're going to listen to you or they're going to honor that because you have the title. You have to earn that respect and you have to earn that trust. And that is something that I did not always know. I definitely didn't know it 30 or 40 years ago when I was first starting out trying to, I thought, okay, I'm the hot shot coach. I'm this guy. I'm that guy. I just got out James Madison. I know what I'm talking about. But sometimes you got to back it up just a little bit, just like you said, and know that these people may be hurting. And what is that reason? And what do we need to do to make it better? And how can we do that together? I think that's a step. I think it's a step for them to learn you, to know you, and to allow yourself to be, we throw around that transparent word a lot, but sometimes I guess we need to get into it a little bit more. Allow them to know you to the level that they could. Now, I've been with some leaders, and this is a soapbox one for me, because I had some leaders that when I look back now, I know this was the fault that they had. It was a problem. And they might have been very proficient in the area of curriculum or doing something else, the data assessment, all of those things are great. Don't get me wrong, I'm not putting any of that down. But what they would not always do was look at how can I allow myself to be known, in a professional way, but you still can be known better, acknowledged in terms of things beyond I'm the boss and you're the whatever role that you're in. And what I did was I started to study leadership before I even knew I was studying leadership. And the people who did, I have a gentleman in particular, he was a guy who looked out for his people, who let you into his world. He let you know he had children and he had another life outside of the life that was there. He didn't really have to do it. And I knew there were a lot of folks before him who didn't do that. He knew that was vital in terms of you being able to be comfortable with him and vice versa. And then he wanted to know how your wife was, or if you were married, or if you had children, or how they were doing and whatnot. Then he went to another level in terms of being this protective guy. He was a protector. So he knew one of his roles was to deflect or protect if there were issues outside of his team, his school. He was the principal. He was going to deflect as much of that as he could so the negative aspects did not get down to the people. And he did an awesome job of it. Probably took more sacrifices than he needed to, but I learned that that was something that I would need to be able to do when I resumed the same role, or when I did get into that role, which was only a few years later. I became a principal. I wanted to be that type of a leader with the staff that I had and deflect whatever I could deflect, if possible, to make their lives a lot easier. But first, make sure they knew who I was and make sure I went a little bit further than the surface aspect of knowing who they were, so that we knew that, hey, now we're together as a team. We're co-workers, not me here and you there.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of what it needs to be to evolve into this person that people they want you to do special things for. They want you to come back. And long after they have left your employ, they still talk about you and still talk about you in a reverential way. That's powerful leadership. That I'm still striving to be that type of a leader in my walk.
That is such a growth statement. I appreciate you saying that now, where you are, you're accomplished, you've quote unquote, you've made it, right? You've had the career, you've written the book, and you're still saying, I really hope I can get to that point. And I
I
think
hope I can
that's,
get to that point.
yeah,
And
that's
I think part of it is like with these people that I'm referencing, I think they were always continuing to grow and you can always get better. It's like in one of the poems that I have, it goes all the way back to my high school days. And the coach had this saying, when you're green, you grow, when you're right, you're rotten. And I said in the poem, I don't ever want to be right. I don't ever want to be rotten. So we're always growing in this place. And I would say it sometimes even with a staff. We're always growing. I'm still growing. If I have a PhD, an EDD, I'm still growing. There are things that I can learn. There are things that I've learned from the students that I can still learn from them and they can teach me some things. So if you're willing to continue to learn, to grow, continue to progress, then you're always going to be an effective leader because you don't get stagnant and you don't get, I hate to use the word rotten, but you don't get rotten. Yeah.
I love that. I have not heard that poem. I love that. I don't want to be ripe. I don't want to be rotten. I like
I don't want to be right. I want to be just right, green or whatever you want to call it. I'm still growing. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. If every leader had to carry one relational truth into every single meeting that they go into, what should that be, Calvin?
I'm gonna say that I'm a part of this team. And it's not about, we used to say me, myself, and I. That was like the egotistical tyrant, whatever you want to call that guy. But it's I'm just a part and a part of this process. And if I ever get to the point where I don't look at it that way, then I'm going to have some issues. In fact, if I can be frank, if you're the type of leader who is always constantly looking to figure out how can I serve my fellow man, how can I serve the I say coworkers because I don't put them down as they're my workers or my staff, they're coworkers along with me. If you're at that place where you are saying constantly, how can I serve them better? How can I continue to serve them better? I think that's the relational truth that I could share with anybody, and I think they would be successful. I don't care what walk of life they're in.
Great point. And it is true when you put yourself at that level, right? They are not reporting up to me. They are my
Right,
equal. They're my coworkers.
right. I've heard it said, and I know I've said it, and I gotta work at how I phrase it because I'm not always the best. Supposed to be a wordsman. I wrote a book, but I'm working on the wordsmanship. They always say you should treat the CEO like you treat the custodian or whoever is that lowest level. And if you get to that place where you can do that, I mean, actually do that, because it's one thing to say it,
Yeah.
and it's another thing. I always see it, and people will say it, and then all of a sudden the CEO comes in, and everybody gets nervous, and even the top guy who's under the CEO gets nervous, and everybody. But you don't do that with the custodian. So if you could ever get to the point where take out the nervousness, the respectful part, where I respect that person as I do respect these other people, then that's the place to go. And that's something that I think everybody's got a little growth space that they could get to. And I know I still have that, but I know that if I take time to talk to those people who some people don't look at as being at the top of the totem pole, I'll use that term, then I know there's a difference there. And I know other people who are watching that see that there's a difference there that, man, he's respectful of everybody. He's respectful of those, she's respectful of those people. She's respectful of that guy. She's respectful of even the lady who just comes in part time. She has time for her. That is another level of growth that a lot of leaders can continue to strive to get to. I'm one of them.
Thank you so much for that. One more wrap up question here. What do you think is a myth about leadership or relationships that you just wish people would stop believing? It's just not true.
People are saying this more. This is probably not one that the audience will not have heard, but I'll just reiterate it so they'll say, hey, he also believes that too. That just because you have a title doesn't make me a leader. I can be given the title, now I've got to earn everything I get after that. And so if I've been given the title of coach, of CEO, if I've been given the title of vice president of this or that particular organization, it's kind of like the book. Now the work begins because I may have the title, but now the work begins. So I've got to work that process. And it may mean relationships, it may mean whatever. The old school of thinking was once you got the title, you had arrived, that's it, you're there, you're the girl or you're the guy. Not so much. That's a myth. That's a fallacy, and that should not be. And I'll throw this in too. I think this generation, Gen X, Gen Z, Gen Y, I think the generation now, they won't tolerate it. Not maybe like the guys that were in my group would do that. So you've got to be able to make sure that you are doing the things that will get you the respect. Don't just assume you got it because of the title. Make sure that you earn it. Then there's a lot more to it and a lot more joy. Now you can be the happy leader because now you can enjoy and continue to do those things to make them feel that same way as well.
Thank you for sharing that myth. I appreciate that very much. And I'm sure the next generation does too, because it's hard to get out of that process of what we've always thought or what we've always known or done. So I appreciate you sharing that myth. Thank you, everyone, for listening today. Thank you so much to Calvin Lawrence. He is the CEO and motivational speaker and author of The Happy Leader. Dr. Calvin Lawrence helps build communities where people are heard and seen regardless of their social backgrounds. Remember to stop, drop, and roll in leadership, regardless of having the title or not. Take care, everyone.
I hope you're feeling inspired and encouraged as you reflect, observe, listen, and evolve through whatever you need to today. Remember, true leadership starts within. For more resources, visit perpetualcapacity.com. Until next time, keep growing and leading on this journey we call life.